Welcome back to the Gospel Sports Truths podcast. A whole lot going on, a whole lot to tackle, and a few things we'll throw in there just so we can get to know each other just a little bit better. My name is Xavier. I am your host, the Fantasy Football Fiend. And as always, I have my guy, BK. BK Wins, who has been helping us with a little segment of this show. Look, I'm not sure if you guys have been paying attention, but BK's best bets have been popping off for about a 6 month. I want to say about 6 months. Like there hasn't been back to back bad weeks since we started BK's best bet. So shout out to my guy BK. How about the people, BK?
Hey y'all.
All righty. So make sure that you guys check us out on YouTube. That's at the Gospel STP at YouTube. If you have not hopped on the Facebook group yet, that is the Gospel Sports Truth Facebook group. We give out a ton of additional information and keep you up to date on all things sports on the Facebook group. And you get to put some faces with a voice by hitting up our YouTube. Make sure you subscribe or follow wherever you happen to be enjoying the podcast. That helps us out quite a bit. But let's just hop right on into it. What's the good word for the week, BK?
Well, you guys all know, friends of the show, we always start with the NFL. So here it is. What NFL team most needs a win this week?
Okay. I'll let you know off top. I cheated a little bit. I hedged my bet. I have two teams. Um, I really believe that Chicago needs to win this week against New England in order just to keep their morale and that, hey, we're going in the right direction, sort of a mind frame intact. To lose to other teams that are contenders, that's one thing. But to lose to a non-contender, I think things may kind of go off the rails a little bit there in Chicago, especially with the success of Jaden Daniels over there in Washington. The second team is the team that's actually playing tonight. And we're recording on Thursday evening. You guys get the show on Friday, but I really feel like Cincinnati has to beat uh, um, Baltimore. It's a very important divisional game, but with getting off to that slow start, they can't take too many more L's in general from anybody and still have those playoff high hopes, if you will. So I'm interested to see if you think they will actually pull off a win tonight and whether or not you feel the same way that it is an important game for them.
Yeah, so much like you, again, great minds think alike. I stole your two teams. So I will share mine and then comment on what you asked, of course. So my two teams are the Bengals tonight. Definitely a must win at 4-5. They started that climb that I've been telling you, that comeback after a really slow start. They're kind of getting themselves back in the game. Big game tonight. Because if they win, they're 5-5 and a game behind the Ravens with 7 games left on their schedule. So, and a return game at home still, I believe. Or maybe they already played that. They already played that game earlier and lost in overtime. So my bad on that. But still, seven games left to make up one game is very doable. They lose tonight. The Ravens are 7-3. They fall to 4-6. You're not going to make up 3 games against this Ravens team in 7 games. And in a jumbled AFC, it's going to be hard to see a pathway to the playoffs for them. So must-win game for them. Do I think they're going to win tonight? I don't have any bet on this tonight. Thursday night games are always tough. Divisional games are even harder. And if I can be honest, I'm not really sure I have a great read on Baltimore. Like, they paced the Ravens, right? But a month ago, they lost to the Raiders at home. So, I just, they'll play really great, and then they'll play some, I don't know, uninspiring games. And the Bengals are desperate. I really just don't know. So I'm going to, I hate to take a cop out on this, but I'm going to take a pass on this other than I'll say, I think with the Ravens being at home and it being a Thursday night game, I'm going to give the Ravens win a very, very tight, close game, but there's not much confidence there. The other team I want to point out are the Niners. They're finally starting to get healthy. McCaffrey's coming back here. Samuel's healthy. Kittle's looking good. The defense is back to their old tricks, I think. At 4-4, this is an important game against the injury ravaged Buccaneers team without Evans and Godwin. I just really think this is a must-win game for them, especially knowing how tight their division is and the NFC in general is. But I like the Niners. They're going to beat the Bucs. What do you think about how I handicap that?
Yeah, I didn't think about that matchup, but yeah, you're spot on. The 49ers and Cincinnati are kind of in a similar position. They just happen to not be going up against a divisional foe this week. But yeah, um, Christian McCaffrey is expected to be back on Sunday. How much run he'll get, we don't know, but he is expected to be back. That will be a tremendous help as far as their offense is concerned. So, yeah, we're on the same page there as far as that prognosis is concerned. All right, so we got a few matchups coming up, and I kind of want to discuss a couple of them. We have Pitt versus Washington. We have Denver versus Kansas City. We have Philly versus Dallas, and we have Detroit versus Houston. Pick a couple of games to kind of expound on, and I'll take the other two.
All right. Well, I will. Since everyone expects me to talk about Pittsburgh and Washington,
I
I'm
surely
going. I'm going to defer that one to you, and
okay.
I'll actually pick two other games. So I'm going to pick Dallas and Philly first. I'm going to stay in my division. Philly, we clearly know that the NFC East is down to two teams, right? Washington and Philly. Dallas lost Dak. CeeDee Lamb has been playing banged up. The owner and the head coach haven't changed. So this is an awful team. Now they're starting Cooper Rush. The Eagles are starting to play better football. And I think the Eagles will have no problem winning, even though it's a road divisional game. I do think that the Eagles will have no problem there, but it's an important game for the Eagles because they still got to play Washington twice, and they can't afford to fall further behind in the division. So it's important to win this game. The other game is Detroit and Houston. Detroit's looked really, really good lately, and Houston hasn't. Ever since Noah Brown got hurt with the hamstring, catching that long touchdown pass, and then, obviously Diggs is out for the year. They're missing their top two wideouts. They have some other injuries. They just haven't looked right. And I know they're 6-3 and they have a comfortable lead in the division. I do think from a confidence standpoint, especially being at home, this is an important game for Houston. You don't want to fall back to 6-4 and kind of really start to muddy up that division that you had a pretty much stranglehold on. But Detroit's been really good. So I'm going to give you my picks here. I like the Lions to win on the road. I just think they're the more complete team. And obviously, I like Philly over Dallas. I won't comment on the Steelers-Washington game, other than I will give the other pick too. I like Kansas City to stay undefeated at home to beat Denver, especially now that they got a little new toy in Kansas City. The rich got richer. So that's how I see that. What about you?
As far as Pitt and Washington are concerned, I think this is a game that is a little bit more important to the scheme of things than what people are realizing. The reason I say that is if Pitt is able to beat Washington, then it sort of feels like we thought you had something there, but the Blue Bloods are still the Blue Bloods. If Washington is able to beat that defense and come out winning against one of the Blue Bloods that just figure out a way to get it done, then we can kind of put the feather in the cap that says that this is a real team. Like this isn't just got lucky a few times, and I'm not saying that that's the way I look at them, but there's certain litmus tests that teams have to go through or before they really truly become anointed as the next thing. If you can get through that defense and that coach unscathed, it says a lot about your team and your coaching. And that combination of talent and coaching is what it takes to be successful long term in the NFL. If you can beat a team that doesn't normally beat themselves, I believe that that says a whole lot about where you are in a maturation process of a team that should have the maturity of a newborn. They kind of skipped the whole new baby stage, and they're off the middle school already. Like they just skipped the whole first part of life that most teams have to go through to get to a certain point. So I think that that's going to be a very telling game. I don't think it's going to be a very high scoring game, but if it is a shootout, I tip my cap further towards Washington's direction. If it's a slow, you know, knockdown, drag out 13-10 type of game, that feels more like a pit type of a game. So we'll just kind of have to see how that goes. Denver, Kansas City. Denver has surprised me on some weeks in a way that is good, and then they have disappointed me in some weeks in a way that is just befuddling. I don't know that this will be one of those weeks where you can overcome again the coaching, which I believe Andy Reid is heads and shoulders above Sean Payton, and obviously the rookie quarterback in Denver, Bo Nix, going up against that of uh, Patty there in Kansas City. Both of them have limited weapons, but DeAndre Hopkins now being in Kansas City just looks like it's going to be a match made in heaven, if you will. And as each week goes by and they get a little bit more familiar with each other, a lot of the talking heads are going to be out there saying, "Why did we ever give up on Hopkins? All he needed was a quarterback." And I believe by the end of the season, that's the feel we're going to have. And if I'm Kansas City, I know I have Rasheed Rice coming back. Cool. I may have Kelsey for another year. Cool. I'm taking up a contract on Hopkins for a year or two to kind of solidify that offense and be the, I would say, probably the second guy, um, and then Worthy just kind of being the take it off the top speed demon that can, you know, kind of open things up for a Kelsey type of a receiver. But that's kind of where I am as far as those games are concerned. So my picks, I'm going to go with Washington. I'm going to go with Kansas City. I'm going to go with Philly, and I'm going to go with Detroit.
Yeah, I agree with you on those. The one thing I'll just comment on the Washington Pitt game is, you know, I think this is a great measuring stick for both teams, but for different reasons. For the Steelers, this is the first real game with Russell Wilson at quarterback, right? Having playing the Giants and the Jets doesn't count. So this is they're going to play real football this week.
Yeah,
And so we're going to see how he plays against a really good team. But on
agreed.
the other side of things, Washington's had a pretty soft schedule. They ran through their little cupcakes of the Panthers, Giants, and Bears. So, there's questions there of how is Washington going to handle a big time game against one of the elite franchises in the NFL? How are they going to deal with the Steelers defense and the challenges that they're going to pose? So I agree. You broke it down perfectly as far as if the game goes above 20, advantage Washington. If it's below 20, I think advantage Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's not going to be able to outscore Washington, mostly because Washington has the better offense and quarterback. So it's going to be hard to do that. But if it's a defensive game, yeah, it definitely favors Pitt as well. So agree with that. While we're still talking about football, Zay, there's a lot of marquee games this week for different reasons. So I was curious what you think on some of these games. We got, of course, I know you love talking the SEC. So, the Bulldogs, the Dogs travel to Oxford to take on Ole Miss this week. Bama, of course, and LSU. Um, Michigan and Indiana. BYU, Utah. Some other under the radar games that I'm going to just mention because in some cases, undefeated teams coming off of their first loss. Washington and Penn State, Iowa State and Kansas, and UVA in Pitt. And then, of course, the team that's still unbeaten, Army at North Texas. What are your thoughts on any of these games? And then I also wanted to kind of ask, too, I'm going to kind of combine our college football section.
Okay.
Which top 10 team do you think is most likely on upset alert?
So, as far as marquee games are concerned, I'll go there first. I think that this week is going to be the death blow to Michigan and the start of the true respect that Indy deserves. Indy, if you've been, a lot of people have, how would I say, even some of the people that have paid attention to Indy haven't really walked away from the game looking at them like, hey, they might be for real. Like everything that they've shown me is saying that they could be one of the best teams in the Big Ten this year. Not to mention the fact that they don't even have the new coach doesn't has his quote unquote guys yet. This may be a team that should be on some radars for the foreseeable future. They got their coach. They have some players in the pipeline. And I really feel like what they do to Michigan this week is going to show people that it's not just about going up against certain teams that they can come out and do what they're supposed to do. No, they can pretty much do it against anybody. And that's what we're about to see. I'll also say I think this week will be a big win for Alabama. They're right on the edge of not making the playoffs. They can't afford another loss. And I don't believe that they're going to take another loss. I think they'll end up being somewhere around team 10, 11, or 12 as far as the final playoff picks are concerned. So, which team is most likely on upset alert that's in the top 10? To be honest with you, bro, there aren't a whole lot of top 10 teams that I feel are in a vicarious position this week. But the one that I can say, just based on the conference and based on the way that they normally play each other, BYU versus Utah, that's the top 10 team in BYU that I see in a matchup that could go a different way. I'll give an honorable mention to Miami because just about every week we see them giving somebody the chance to beat them. They just haven't done it yet. So those are the two top 10 teams that I would say are most likely on upset alert. What you got on that?
Yeah, so and by the way, I understand that this may come across as being biased given how I like a certain team. But without a doubt, it's Miami.
Okay.
Miami's been inconsistent at best. Their offense is top 3 in college football. Their defense is in below 75. I like to openly joke that they play a cover 0, meaning everybody's open. The key to this upset or the recipe is it's a conference road game. It's almost like a Super Bowl for Georgia Tech. And they beat them last year in Miami. Remember the old not taking a knee game?
Right.
Which I'm sure Miami may or may not have reviewed a couple times this week. But hopefully they'll remember to do that this time. But I say that to say that this should be a higher scoring game. It's a road game. And we know Cristobal always finds a way to flub up some game somewhere. And so this might be the opportunity where it gets them. I'm not predicting that they're going to lose this game, but I think it's most likely. To your BYU point, it's kind of like the holy war there, so it's a huge game for these teams. My only issue with this is while Utah's at home and it's usually a hard place to win, they're playing their backup quarterback. They're banged up all over on both sides of the ball. I don't think they have enough depth to withstand all that to give them the fight that they need. Like being motivated is one thing, having the home crowd is another, having actually talent on the field is a whole other thing. And this isn't the same Utah team, but Miami's a team there. Couple games that I'm going to highlight that you didn't talk about. Although I will comment first on Bama LSU. I tend to trust Bama to win this game on the road. I think they have a little bit more talented quarterback, but more importantly, they have better defense, and defense travels. I think they're going to be able to run the ball better than LSU can, which will allow them to be balanced. And to be honest, I think Bama's a better coached team. I know some folks in Tuscaloosa won't agree with me given some of the setbacks they've had this year. But DeBoer has won everywhere he's been, and I know it hasn't been the start that many envisioned there. But remember, he did beat Georgia at home. So, it's not like the guy can't win games. It's a must-win game for both teams. The loser is definitely out of the playoffs. In my mind, LSU is already out of the playoffs. If you look at the 8 games they played so far, half of those games they played mediocre football. In your mind, have you ever seen a playoff team play mediocre half the season? I'm sorry, I just don't see it.
I don't know yet because I've never seen 12 teams in the playoffs. So yes, when it was 4, you're absolutely right. I mean, we may be in a point now where the last 2 teams that get in is based on their potential, not based on their output throughout the year. So, and especially when I'm assuming that it'll happen, but especially when they go up to 16, those last 2 or 3 teams are going to be teams that are just in there specifically because of what they can do on any given Saturday, not what they have done on every Saturday, if that makes sense.
That's definitely fair. No, I agree. As far as some other games, right? This is something from both a betting standpoint I look at, and I'll give you an example, right? So I didn't publicize this play, so I'm not saying this to take credit for it. But a game that I bet on personally last week was Navy. I forget who Navy played, but they were a 10.5 point, 11 point
Notre
favorite.
Dame.
No, that was the 2 weeks ago. But Notre Dame crushed him, and they were both undefeated. Well, Notre Dame had the 1 loss, and Navy was undefeated. But the next game, I think they played like Tulane or somebody, and they were an 11-point favorite, and they lost again. And I say this to say that in college football, you see this all the time where a team will beat them twice. They were so up for that Notre Dame game, they got disappointed and let down that they let the next team beat them too. And so I specifically look at, can Penn State rebound at home against Washington? Can Iowa State play a neutral game against Kansas where they're only a 3-point favorite over Kansas? Will they suffer back-to-back losses after a tough last-second loss to Texas Tech? And then how about Pitt? Pitt was undefeated. They got absolutely annihilated by SMU. By the way, told you, the Mustangs are for real. They blew them out. How will Pitt play at home against Virginia, who, by the way, is coming off of a bye? They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. So these are some kind of games that I look at. Can these now 1-loss teams save themselves from another loss? Because they all have things to play for. So just something to kind of keep an eye on.
I can definitely see that. I also feel like this is one of those weeks where someone comes out of the woodworks and it's like, wow, I didn't see that team take an AO this week. But like you said, with college, just a little bit different than the Jimmies and Joes. Emotions play a lot more of a part in college outcomes than they do with professional outcomes. So I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. All right, my guy. Our truth and nothing but the truth. What we got up first?
If you could make any changes to college football, what would they be?
I have three things for this. Improved schedules. Um, let's get it to a point where if we're going to be all across the maps as far as conferences are concerned, let's figure out a way that we can either get to where we're going and stay there for a couple of weeks versus having to go from East Coast to West Coast to Midwest to East Coast to West Coast. Like, it's too much. It's too much. They're not professional athletes. Let's at least put some of those crisscross games where we would be crisscrossing the country, doing weekends where they wouldn't either they wouldn't have schools or there's some type of break or whatever the case may be, and get the quote unquote normal conference games done the way you would normally do them. Um, Guardian caps. I would make them mandatory for every single college player. Why? And this may be neither here nor there, but the only way for them to become Alpha Pro in the NFL is for them to have worn them for 3 to 4 years already in college, and it's no longer a big deal. It's just what the new school or new age football is, versus people like Tua Tagovailoa, who might be one headshot away from not being able to play football anymore, saying that they are a real football player and don't want to put on their Guardian cap. Like, what are we doing? Like, you have to make it an easier transition. And then if the numbers are showing that it's actually working, then that'll also be able to kind of make people think about their longevity versus just thinking about how it quote unquote looks. I liken it to the safety belt or a condom. It's the same thing. When it wasn't popular, it wasn't popular. But now with the statistics that we know how many lives have been saved. You might want to strap up. That's just where that's how I'm looking at that. And lastly, no, zero, other than in the minds of the public, no rankings until the first official playoff rankings. Rank them according to what you've seen on the field and not what you thought you were going to see before football ever started. There's so many teams that are on the outside looking in that if all you had to go by was their play on the field and their current record, there would be no way that they wouldn't be ahead of some of the other teams that are in the top 12 right now. But that would be the three things that I would change in college football.
Well, this will shock you, but I have plenty. So I'm going to start with the big one. I would abolish the NCAA period. If the system is broken, the lawsuits prove that it's broken. They have no idea how to effectively run college football anymore. We're kind of just throwing things at the wall or being forced to cave into things that they weren't prepared to do. They need to abolish it. They need to combine former college coaches, administrative people in these institutions, whether it be presidents or whatnot, and a combination of athletic directors, and maybe even some elite businessmen to come up with have a committee where they're effectively managing the landscape of college football. Because at this point, everybody knows that how they're running things is a joke. And that's not my opinion. That's literally the majority opinion. It's been a mess. It's been broken for years. Let's fix it. Also, we need to tighten the transfer portal rules. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but that's pretty self-explanatory. I'm a big proponent of changing the overtime rules, the going for 75,000 times to try to win a game at the end is ridiculous. This is real college football. This is not like, we're just trying to get through a game. Please stop. Um, like you said, I would eliminate any rankings at all until October 1st. I need to see 4 games. That way, everyone's played a third of their schedule, and I can at least realistically see who of these teams played, who have they beat, and how have they looked. The other thing, I would change the playoffs to 16 teams. I think it's a nice number. It'll allow for, 4 rounds essentially. I really do like that format. And the other thing is I would change the selection process criteria for these playoff teams. One of the things that's important to me, the committee has proven that they don't like the margin of victory metric. They kind of finesse it to game control. But who did you play? I need you to play a quality schedule. Who did you beat? And also, what was the margin of victory? If, Zay, you're the head coach of Ohio State, and your average margin of you finished the season 11-1 with your lone loss on the road to Oregon, and you don't win the conference title, right? And your average margin of victory is 30 points. And I'm the head coach of Nobody Cares State, and I'm 11-1, and my average margin of victory is 10. Does that seem like we're the same teams? Like, well, the record is the same. Clearly, because of where I coach, I'm not playing the quality of schedule that you are in the Big Ten. But it's how you look playing these games. If I'm dominating these games, that shows because the end of the day, and nobody likes to admit this, but I think it matters. There's a VP of common sense and an eye test that matters. Your eyes don't lie to you when you watch these games.
So, BK, let me just challenge that quickly, right? I hear everything that you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. But my thing is this. I don't believe that we are, I don't want to use the word smart enough. I don't believe that we are able to detach ourselves enough from the name on the jersey to be truly transparent and fair to the players on the field. And I say that because I've seen several teams that at the end of the day, the argument was where they're them. So of course they're the better team. And I also don't like having to be unsportsmanlike to have control of your own fate. And I believe that that's another thing that, like, in a completely 2 different industries, I understand. But in the NFL, it doesn't matter if your average point of victory was by 1 point or by 25 points. Doesn't matter. I mean, if you're looking at average, if you're looking at teams played against an average margin of victory, we wouldn't have the New York Giants beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl twice, because there were teams that played much better than them leading up to the playoffs. So if it wasn't just about win-loss, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to be the David beating up the Goliath. And it's taken a whole lot for me to say this, BK. It's taken a whole lot for me personally just to say this, okay? Being a Patriots fan.
I'm sure you probably got a little sick while you said it.
I slightly spewed in my own mouth, but it's okay. It's a little indigestion now, but I would like for us to use a system where whatever we're using, whatever matrix we're using, none of it is based upon us trusting someone else's logic. I need something that I can put in, that I can plug into a computer, and the computer can turn around and say, based on the formula, these are your guys. I need teams to be able to go into the season already knowing and understanding, if I do this, and this, I'm in, unless someone else does this. That make it by the math. That's all that I ask. Because at the end of the day, if the math doesn't fit, then why should someone's opinion fit? So whatever matrix you come up with, we're not all seeing the games the same. It's like the eye test in boxing. Yeah, we see how that normally turns out. Someone's eyes are completely Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder. Like, we didn't see the same game, we didn't see the same fight. What are we doing here? Make it something that is completely objective, and then we let the chips fall where they may, because we all knew what the rules were going into it. And now it's up to you to schedule the games that are going to come out favorably based on the matrix. It's up to you to make sure that you win by however many points that your schedule says you need to win by, because you have a tougher or lower tiered schedule. Like, just make it to where as 1+1 = 2, and we don't turn it into uh, something that is opinion based. I hate people getting in or not getting in just based on opinions, because more people are going to see the blue bloods with that blind eye that ends up impacting them positively than your Boise States of the world, than your SMUs of the world, than your BYUs, your Armies of the world. Like, let's just make it plain Jane. This is what you got to do, and move on from there. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. I definitely can understand.
That's just where I am with it. But everything else you said, lockstep. We're right there with each other. And some of those I knew you were going to say, so I left off of my list. Oh, I got one new one, and this is for football in general. Is there any reason why we can't have electronics on the side, and that show exactly where the ball ended up, versus having, again, the eyeball test or whatever the case is? Now, that secondary, you can never get rid of people. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Machines mess up every now and then. You need to be able to have someone come in and say, "Hey, that's not right." So, okay, cool. But outside of that, how do we have people that are supposed to have first downs, and the referees marking them 2 yards short, and vice versa? Like, I shouldn't have to. Oh, I got one other one. I'm sorry. Um, how do you lose a challenge because you were right? However many times I challenge you and you're wrong, I should not lose the challenge. That means you didn't do your job. Now, if I challenge you and I'm wrong, I should quit wasting people's time. But outside of that, like, if I get the 2 challenges. If I'm right on the first one, guess what? I should still have 2 challenges, because obviously you're not doing your job very well today. So that's stuff, and that would be in college and in pro. And I'm spent. That's it.
So, can I give you something that's, I'm going to go rogue about that.
Okay.
And I'm sure I'll get backlash for this. And I'm not being, this is more tongue in cheek than being serious about it.
Okay.
But you know my love of officiating in the tremendous amount of incompetence that they have. And I think the laziness, because they know they have replay that'll bail them out when they are out of position and missed calls. How about we have a penalty system for officials? You miss a call, you get a warning. You miss another call that they have to challenge, it's a fine. You miss X amount, you're suspended. Because at the end of the day, why should a coach have to challenge 2 times because you missed easy calls that I saw without even having to review? And you're standing right there. How can you miss? And the same goes with replay officials. If we replay it and you still get it wrong, that's a warning. Because I need, and again, I'm not being serious that this really should happen, But what I am saying is there needs to be a tremendous stricter policy to hold account officials on the field and in the replay booth accountable for how many times they F up games and cause not only miss the calls, but are lazy about it because they know they have replay. And then replay screws it up. And it's like, well, we have replay to get it right. You still don't get it right. What are we doing?
I don't know that the union of officials would agree.
I'm definitely not on
But
their
I see
Christmas
where you're
card
coming
list.
from, though. I see where you're coming from. But then, do we implement something to whereas when coaches make the wrong call, they get like fines, or fines can be tricky because you're essentially saying if I make a mistake at my job, which everyone else can do on the field, I'm the only one losing money. So, I mean, I feel there should be something done, but I don't know if being fined is the right path to take because if you take my money, now I have to go to the opposite end of the spectrum and figure out a way to make up my money, and you just created an issue. So if you're gonna take my money anyway, I might as well take money from over here from so and so that's gonna trump the amount of money that you're gonna take from me to make the bad call anyway. And you know, it can be a slippery slope.
Well, like I said, I wasn't serious about actually the fining part, but what I am serious about is we all know the officiating has gone downhill, and we also know that both the officials on the field and in the booth need to do a better job. I need them to be held accountable more strictly than the current, well, yeah, we missed the call. That's
But you know
great.
what, BK? What you could do, and it would be a quasi fine, is not go by one game, but you don't get to coach in the playoffs if you've hit. It's kind of like once you get a certain amount of technical fouls, you're suspended for X amount of time or whatever. You don't get to coach in the playoffs once you hit a certain amount of missed calls and pay them enough in the playoffs that it makes sense for them to get every call right because they don't want to miss out on the playoff money. So that way you're kind of correcting yourself. You're not being penalized money, but you aren't getting rewarded money when you made X amount of mistakes. That would be the direction that I would go.
Do you know the other thing that I would do? Because I enjoy putting pressure on the officials, is we have sideline reporters, right? And they give us all the fluff, and usually, not that I'm downing their profession, they have a role and they do a good job of it. But we have all these fluff interviews on the sideline that everyone either knows the answer or don't care what they ask. How about we have the sideline reporters interview officials at halftime or after the game if they missed calls to discuss and answer why they missed said call? I would like to know why you missed a call that you were standing right in front of.
That sounds more like a dead way of going about doing things because I'm an idiot. That's the reason I got it wrong this time, Dad. Okay,
Oh no,
there's no good answer to the question.
make,
I
make,
messed up.
make, make no mistake. Make no mistake. I'm being petty as can be about this, but at the end of the day, all this sarcasm for me is coming from, we know officiating is terrible. It needs to get better. They need to be held accountable to more degree than, well, the league sent out a notice saying we acknowledge we missed a call. That's great. I need you to stop. And none of us are perfect. I understand. It'd be like sending a letter to my boss that I made a mistake. Now, we both know I don't do that. Just kidding. We all make mistakes, right? But it'd be like sending a letter to my boss saying, hey, BK screwed up today. And my boss would be like, hey, the grass is green. Tell me something different. No, just kidding. But all joking aside, like, there needs to be some more accountability is all I'm getting at.
All right, let me ask you this: should the NCAA have some type of a salary cap on NIL deals? I got a feeling we're going to look at this one differently, but go ahead.
I think you're going to be shocked that I'm going to be actually concise for once.
Okay.
No.
Well, I think you'll be just as shocked that I completely agree with you and concur. The answer is no. You're worth whatever somebody is willing to pay you. Point blank. Period. Um, and at that point, when you get a certain amount, put it like this: I don't think that sports in general is worth the mass amount of money that people are willing to spend on it. But as long as someone's willing to spend on it, adding a cap is just going to put you back in a situation to where we were before NIL came into play, where now it's something else to govern, it's something else to get people in trouble for that it should never be there. You're creating a mess to have to clean up by adding some type of a cap. So yeah,
100%.
should we be concerned? Moving on over to our NBA question. Should we be concerned about the slow start of the 76ers, Knicks, Bucks, and Lakers? And how would you assess LA's start so far under JJ Redick?
No, we shouldn't be concerned about any of the slow starts. In most cases, if we played 7 or 8 games out of 82, it'd be ridiculous to push the panic button when you have 74, 75 games left in the season. That's ridiculous. The slow starts, though, are a little bit different for each team, right? Philly's slow start has been strictly because of no Embiid or Paul George. It's hard to win when 2 of your best players or your 2 best players aren't playing. Not that it's surprising that they're hurt, but nevertheless, it doesn't change that it's hard to win without your best players. So it definitely is a challenge. The Bucks, listen, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to. Mike Budenholzer should have never been fired as head coach of the Bucks. Since then, they continue to run through coaches that can't get it done. The Bucks they need better coaching. They have the talent. Granted, they're an aging roster, but they have the talent, and their coaching kills them. They need better coaching. It was a mistake to fire him, so that's on coaching. The Knicks, look, the Knicks starting lineup is good. But when they made the trade they did for Towns, they don't have any depth. So, your starters, contrary to what Thibodeau likes to do, your starters can't play every minute of every game all season long. So they're going to get tired. They're going to get hurt. Things are going to happen. They're going to have their struggles. The only team that I haven't talked about, which I know you're at the edge of your seat to hear about, is the Lakers. And so they got off to a fast start, right? They were 3-0, I think. They've since kind of tripped up and fallen to 4-4 the last I looked. Again, the Lakers, I think Redick is actually a really cerebrally smart coach, and he has his team buying into what he's trying to do. The challenge for the Lakers is they really only have 3 players. So it's going to be hard to win a lot when you only really have LeBron, AD, and I'm drawing Austin Reeves, right? Like that. That's your talent. So it's LeBron has been great. AD has been great. The coaching has been really good. A huge upgrade over Darvin Ham, although I think that's anyway, not hard to be better than Darvin Ham. But I think all of these teams have a long way to go to correct where they're at. It's a long season. I think the team that's most in, if I picked a team, would actually be the Bucks, because unless they fire their coach, this team is screwed.
Same page as your BK. In some situations, it's injuries. Other situations, I feel like teams need to gel. whether it's a new coach and new players, or whether it's just new players. I'm not really worried about the start. When we get to about quarter of the way of the season, that's when I'll start looking at, okay, are you molding into what your coach foresaw you being at the start of the season? And then I'll be a little bit more stauncher as far as my opinions are concerned and whether or not there's any need to worry. But for all intents and purposes, there aren't too many sports other than college football of yesteryear where your start actually has a whole lot of bearing on your finish. So I'm not really worried about it, to be honest with you. That pretty much takes care of our truth and nothing but the truth. And we get to go ahead and roll into our top five all time of something. This week, it's actually our top five actresses. We did top five actors on last week. We have our top five actresses on this week. BK, start us out with your number five.
So I'm smiling because I'm stealing something that you've made famous on this show. I'm going to start with my honorable mentions. So I have Mila Kunis, and I also have Anna Kendrick. I'm going to get a lot of grief for this, and you know what? So be it. Big fan of the movie Pitch Perfect. Love Anna Kendrick. Didn't realize prior to that what a great and talented singer she was. But she is a terrific vocal artist as well. But those are the honorable mentions.
Got
My number five is Jessica Alba. Huge Jessica Alba fan. So
She's been in a lot of different roles. Definitely has a range of talent. Number five for me, Regina King. I've been watching Regina King since she was on 227. Loved her in Watchmen. She's done voiceovers and created shows such as the Boondocks and things of that nature, that a lot of people may know but not know that she participated in. But Regina King is definitely on my list there at number five. Who you got for number four?
loved her in her role in Baywatch, Alexandria Daddario.
Good old school Baywatch.
Yes. The remake or the reboot or however you want to call that. But yes, she's my number four. How about you?
Number four, Viola Davis.
Hmm.
How to Get Away with Murder is probably one of my all-time favorite TV series,
That was a
and
great show.
it really was. Like the thing about How to Get Away with Murder is it never ended the way you thought it was going to end, and I was pretty much over TV series and movies that were just cliche, and what you thought was going to happen is exactly what happened. Not in How to Get Away with Murder. It was just different. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and that's my number four. Who you have at number three?
Number three, I don't know. A lot of people probably heard of her, but Alice Eve. She was the star actress in She's Out of My League. But love that movie. So Alice Eve is my number three. How about you?
Number three for me is Julia Roberts. Runaway Bride, Ocean's 11. There's a plethora of movies and shows that she's been
Pretty
in.
Woman.
Yeah, pretty one. Well, that's the one that everyone. That I think that might have been the one that kind of booted things off a little bit for her, or kicked things off for her. But yeah, Julia Roberts, excellent actress, and she's like the way I feel about Tom Hanks on the actor side is the way I feel about Julia Roberts on the actress side. I haven't seen very many movies where they messed up, or I'm just like that was a waste of my time. I there just aren't very many of those in her repertoire. So yeah, Julia Roberts at number three for me. Who's your number two?
My number two is Reese Witherspoon. Um, Legally Blonde, so many movies, but I think she's a very talented actress, and she's been able to be successful in a lot of different roles. I like the versatility. but obviously Legally Blonde was something big that people associate with her. Who do you have as your number two?
Number two for me, Meryl Streep.
Hmm.
Um, she has a ton of older content that's great. I've loved her recently in Only Murders in the Building, which has two of my other favorites being Steve Martin and not Steve Carroll, Martin Short and Steve Martin.
It is a
Uh,
great. I love that show, Tuesday.
me and my wife watch that show all the time. I normally try to wait to the end of the season so we can just binge watch it in like 2 days and watch every single show. It's only a 30-minute show, but she's brought a little bit of depth to the show that I didn't think was there previously. But several movies and shows that she's been in, and again, another one of those. You know, she didn't do a bad job. Mamma Mia, The Manchurian Candidate. There's just a lot of movies that she's been in, and even ones where she made it, even if she wasn't the central character. So Meryl Streep at number two for me. What you got?
Number one, I think many would agree that she's the All American girl. Number one, Friends superstar, Jennifer Aniston.
Jennifer Aniston was like the it girl for like most of the 2000s. Like but whether it was movies, whether it was shows, and she's been consistent. I can definitely say that she stays in the pocket. Another one of those people that don't really have a bad role because she chooses roles that she can knock out of the park. So yeah, agreed. Number one for me, Cicely Tyson, who was also in How to Get Away with Murder. Some of her earlier work, you may remember Roots, kind of midway through The Help, are all shows and movies that are critically acclaimed and won't be going anywhere anytime soon. She's had a ton of work out there, and I mean, even like in her latter stages when working with Tyler Perry on a couple of his movies and things of that nature. I've just never seen Cicely Tyson mail it in and just take her paycheck and go home in any particular role. Like if she's in the movie, you're gonna really feel like she's whatever character it is that she's portraying. You forget that she's an actress and you believe that she is that person. So yeah, Cicely Tyson is number one on my list. With that being said, the money making portion of the show, we have arrived, BK. BK's best bets. What we got?
If you guys have been following along, it's been just nonstop heat over here. On fire, I tell you. Last week was another great week. I hope you guys took advantage. Uh, got some teaser games for you this weekend. I know Zay's going to rush to get his pen and paper to start making notes. I know
Yep.
that I saw the look. But the Steelers are 3-point underdogs at Washington. I like teasing that line to 9. While I think Washington can win the game, I don't think they'll beat them by more than 10 or 9 in this case. So I like the Steelers and 9. The Chiefs 7.5-point favorites. Will tease that down to 1.5. I think the Chiefs will easily beat Denver, but just to be safe, a field goal is very safe at home. The Niners money line. The Chargers -1.5. The Eagles at Dallas -1. Those are the teasing portions of the bet, moving those down 6 points. Those are the NFL plays. In college, a few straight up bets. Georgia, my biggest play of the week, Georgia -2.5 at Ole Miss. Why, you ask? You know, Carson Beck has thrown multiple interceptions 2 weeks in a row and not looked very good, but that defense is really good. And remember when people seemed to, at least from a betting angle, disrespected Georgia, what they did to Texas? Did you all forget what happened there? Well, here's the thing. Lane Kiffin doesn't beat teams he's not supposed to beat. Georgia's the better team. They're the more talented team. And key thing, Ole Miss really banged up. Their star wide receiver out for this game. That's going to be a big blow for Ole Miss's offense. Give me the dogs. It's not often you get them as a small favorite. Love the dogs here, -2.5. I also like BYU -4 at Utah. I know it's the Holy War. I know that Utah is going to be out to spoil their season. I know how tough Utah is to play. But again, when you're playing your backup quarterbacks and your defense is banged up and you can't really score points, this team is struggling to score more than 17 points a game. You're not going to be able to hold down BYU's offense for 4 quarters. And BYU's defense is also really good. Give me the Cougars -4 on the road. They're going to stay undefeated. Not official plays, but games that I want you to be mindful of. Army -4 at North Texas. I look for Army to stay undefeated. Also, the Gamecocks. They're really good in underdog roles. They're also good when they're on the road in these kind of situations. I know Vandy's been my darling for weeks. I've been riding the Commodores for many weeks. The Gamecocks have owned Vandy head-to-head. I like the Gamecocks. Not only can they run the ball, but they can effectively pass the ball with Sellers, and the Carolina defense is really, really good. Give me the Cox -3 on the road. Also a teaser bet. I know this team bit me last week at home against Louisville. Clemson -1 on the road against Va Tech. The starting quarterback, Drones, likely not to play for Va Tech. If he does play, he's going to be limited in terms of injury, dealing with that injury. If they have to start a backup, it's going to be a tall task for the Hokies at home. Also, Clemson will be out to prove a point after getting embarrassed at home against the Cards. Also, Pitt -1.5 against Virginia at home. I just think that the Panthers are a little bit too talented there at home, and they will not let themselves lose 2 games in a row. So those are the best bets for this week. Take them, fade them. I hope this information helps. By all means, also visit our Facebook group. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, any games you're thinking about. I'm happy to give you advice. But that wraps up this week's segment, and good luck to everybody.
And on to the last part of the show, and one of the favorite parts of the show, the can't miss weekly rant. And BK and I are actually going to rant about the same thing for once. And this, by no means, disclaimer, is a political show, but we're going to have about 45 seconds each to rant essentially about the same thing, and then we'll talk about it again 4 years from now. BK, what you got?
Yeah, so you said it perfectly. Not a political show, but you know that I take making us money very seriously. Do you remember back in July who I said the best bet for this election was?
Sure did. You said Trump was the betting favorite.
And you also know that A, I don't like losing money, and B, I have an obligation to give you what I think is truly what the best pick is for a reason. Also, having a political background, I can tell you I'm not foolish enough to make a prediction 3 months in advance before an election unless I'm really sure. That said, here's my rant. I don't care who you voted for. Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't make me think of you any better or any worse. You vote for who I voted for? Great. You didn't vote for who I voted for? Great. I don't think you're any better of a person, any worse of a person. It matters to me zero how you voted. You have the right and the civic duty to express your belief and opinion on your ballot however you choose. I'm not here to tell you to change how you feel, nor should you ever do that to me. I can assure you that's a losing cause. However, that's a bet you won't want to win or take. But here's the thing that bothers me. Can we stop judging people for how they vote? Like, it's crazy to me, the stuff that I read, that if you voted for person A, you're the worst person ever. If you vote for person B, you're ridiculous and an embarrassment to this country, and I don't want to be your friend because you voted this way. This is ridiculous. People are allowed to have different views. That's what makes this country great. We have the freedom and the choice to cast our votes however we choose. Be respectful of that choice. I will never, ever, ever, and I don't say that often, I don't use always or never often. I will never, ever judge you for how you vote, whom you vote, or for the reasons you voted. Please stop doing that to other people. That's ridiculous, and that's the truth.
I'll make this short and sweet, BK. At the end of the day, there's one America, there's one president, there's one election. For president, that is. No matter which way you went, no matter which reasons you chose to go that route, the election is over. Respect the office, and let's move on with life. I've been around now for a few years. I've been through several elections. I'm going to tell you a secret that someone else may not tell you. The person that you liked ain't all they chopped up to be. The person that you don't like ain't as evil as you make them out to be. Get over yourself and let's move on with life. We've seen this through several different elections. We go through this process of demonizing one side to prop up the other, and we go through this process of, and it's really worse now in the internet age and the social media age. But at the end of the day, can we now get back to life? We had that 6 month process of everyone hating on each other, if not hating each other, which is ridiculous in and of itself. But it's time to get back to life. I promise you, the last time a president was elected, everything that everyone said would go wrong didn't. And this time, everything that everyone is saying will go right or wrong won't happen the way that we have preset in our mind either. And the vast majority of us aren't in an actual position to whereas every decision that is made is literally going to affect you in your daily life. So it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to have feelings about what direction. But at the end of the day, it'll be okay. We'll still be America. Tomorrow the sun will still shine. And at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. Take advantage of every day that you have. Don't feel like it's you know, hell in the handbasket because this candidate won and that candidate didn't, or vice versa. Let it go. Let it go. And that's the truth.
Well,
All
and
right,
real,
good people.
real, real quick, I wanted to jump in, Zay, if I could, and just a quick comment. I'm a big believer, control what you can control, right? If you went out and you voted and you did your part, that's all you can do. You can't control what happens for there. If you don't feel like that's enough involvement, then I encourage, however you feel, to volunteer for those particular parties and help out and be part of the reason to drive the change that you want.
Yeah, don't wait until 90 days before the election and put a whole bunch of Facebook posts up and then thinking that you did something to sway the public. And never mind. That's a whole different for a different day.
But the other thing is, here's the thing that bothers me, and I'm going to finish with what you eloquently started. I must have missed this. Did we change our country's name from the United States of America? Is it the Me States of America? I don't remember that being changed. I mean, I know that sometimes I get accused of living under a rock. And contrary to some people, I do have the internet. I know. I mean, the people think I do have the internet. I know. But it's the United States of America. We are one nation. We're not 75 nations. We are one nation. And I think that I just want us to be, it's an emotional thing. I understand people are excited. I understand people are hurting. But I think what makes this country great is our ability to be resilient and to work together. And I would rather us work together than try to tear each other apart. because that's never going to accomplish anything.
And that, sure, is the truth and nothing but the truth. We'll see you guys next week.
Have a good weekend, y'all.